Well, good evening. I am Nancy Morrissey, Executive Director of the Fairfield Area Chamber of Commerce. On behalf of the Chamber, welcome to the 2013 Fairfield City Council Candidates Forum. I would like to thank the Fairfield Public Library for the use of their facility, the Fairfield Ledger, the Fairfield Media Center, and 1570 KMCD for their coverage of tonight's forum, and to all of you here tonight. Tonight, the four candidates before you, actually three at this point, are prepared to discuss the issues and make a case to Fairfield citizens for their eligibility for election to the Fairfield City Council. Each candidate will be given 3 minutes to introduce himself. What follows will be a timed question and answer period during which each candidate will be asked to answer 7 questions. Each candidate will be allotted 2 minutes to answer each question, and the questioning will be rotated. We will now begin with opening remarks from each candidate in accordance with a coin toss earlier this evening. To determine which candidate will begin, I will now ask Doug Flournoy to begin his 3-minute introduction, who will be then followed by Patrick Bosold, then Richard Walbum, and hopefully Andrew Perry.
Well,
Doug?
good evening. Thank you, Nancy, and the Chamber for organizing this forum. I appreciate it very much, and I appreciate everybody being here tonight, the media and interested citizens. It's really important that we have these kinds of events to let people become informed, and I wish more people were here, actually, but it is what it is. A little bit about myself. I moved here 20 years ago, and I took a position at Indian Hills Community College. I'm a professor of chemistry there. Ever since I moved here from the very beginning, I was always committed to becoming involved in the community here and really living my life as if I was going to be here the rest of my life. I didn't know what was going to happen at the time, and it turns out I've been here quite a while now, and I'm very content living here, and I've gotten very involved in the community. So as a result of that motivation and philosophy, I served on the school board for 12 years. I was on the Art Walk board for 7 years, and I've been in Rotary since 2002. My motivation for running for this particular position was several things. One, I wanted the challenge. I think it's very interesting to learn new things, and I think this would be a good place to do that for me. I think I have a lot of skills that I can bring to the council and offer the community. I've already demonstrated those in other areas of my activities here in Fairfield. And I also am desirous of being of service to the community. I've done a lot of service in this community, and I want to continue to do that. I think Fairfield's a great place to live, and anything I could do to make it a better place to live, I think would be good for me and my family and, of course, everybody here. So with all the experience I've gained, I feel that I can provide competent and effective participation and service on the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Patrick Bosold.
Thanks for coming, everybody. Good to see you here. Nancy, thanks for organizing this. Appreciate it. First thing I want to say is I've lived here for 26 years, plus a year in the late 70s at the university. And Fairfield is a great place to live. It's not just a slogan. I do want to take a moment to thank everyone who holds now or has held office, particularly at the city level. I think that the mayor, the city council, and the city's managers over the last 25 years, especially the last 10, have done an outstanding job of forwarding a lot of things that are important to me, especially Go Green and sustainability initiatives. So Ed, Michael, everybody, Mrs. Rasmussen, thank you. Well done. My main reason in running for this office is to forward those initiatives especially. The city has done a great job with its Go Green plan and sustainability initiatives. I really want to see the city keep that momentum up and support any and all of those kinds of endeavors, most especially with the understanding that we all need to know, this is another thing I thank people who've held the office for, 95% of these jobs is just heavy lifting and grunt work. It's a lot of work. These are some of the toughest volunteer positions in town as far as I'm concerned. And I thank the people who have done them, and I intend to do this to the best of my ability if I am elected. thank the city for doing a good job of maintaining fiscal prudence and sustainability while going through everything we've had to go through. Some major challenges. The comprehensive plan, I think at this point a firm, a consulting firm has been chosen to actually move that forward. Is that correct, Ed? Not finalized? Okay, but it's in process. Well, again, I don't know if I'd have a voice in that process, but want to be sure it's a company that understands well what Fairfield's long-term objectives are, and I'm sure that's going to be handled well. Buy fresh, buy local. I'm a big advocate of that whole program, and I'd really like to see the city do everything possible to move that forward as proactively as possible. That's my idea. That's my thought of true, smart business development. Lots of that, Hometown Harvest, a lot of good things going on there. I think the city does a good job, both as the city and through various advocacy organizations, of going after grants and other kinds of financial support, state, federal, local, NGO, all of it. Want to help support that in every way I can. I think it's smart to look for as much outside help as you can possibly get. Blue Zone, 10 seconds, all right. Lots more to say, but in any case, I'm pleased to have the opportunity to run, and again, thank you all for coming this evening.
Richard, welcome.
Yes, I'm an electronics engineer, which is a problem-solving profession, and I've written 2 books, A Lawful Remedy to Tyranny and Designed for Plunder, and I've been here for 30 years. Some people asked me to run, which is the reason that I'm running. And my intention is to be a voice for higher law, so my opening remarks are mainly about the position of higher law because most people don't know what it is. Our nation was founded upon a several thousand-year-old tradition of natural law, which requires that laws be just, reasonable, and not arbitrary, serve the common good, treat all equally, exercise procedural fairness, go no further than necessary, and that's a really important point, go no further than necessary to remedy the perceived harm, be tailored for minimal intrusion on pre-existing rights, and harmonize diverse interests. It's hard to hear. Absent harm, there can be no law and no victimless crimes. As an example, since raw milk is regulated in some states, this proves that prohibition is not necessary. The city should pass legislation allowing its use and nullify laws contrary to higher law. Marijuana is regulated in some states, proving that prohibition is not necessary, and it is the only known substance effective against the side effects of chemotherapy. As a God-given substance, it cannot be prohibited. All rights can be regulated, though, to the extent necessary to protect society, but no further. We're not wards of the state, and we cannot be protected against our will. Whoever owns the children has the right to determine the standards of child rearing, education, and discipline. It's apparent that the state believes it owns our children. The law should be changed to promote parental government as a legitimate form of government where parents have the responsibility to protect, raise, nourish, and discipline them, with children regarded as the property of their parents. A community currency will stimulate the local economy, support local small business, create jobs, end unemployment, and promote self-sufficiency. Right now I'm promoting the Fair Note, the community currency, and I'd like to see the city take it over and be a lot more powerful. To secure these rights, the trial juries and grand juries must act as the link to higher law. In a government of the people, these juries are the government, and traditionally had the right to judge the law, the facts, and use their conscience as the link to natural law. Even if local government has no jurisdiction over juries, it can educate our community of the jury's rights and duties. Oh, okay. So in summary, I'm the voice for natural law and higher law. And if you want that voice represented, then I'm the person. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now begin the question-answer segment of tonight's candidate forum. You will each have exactly 2 minutes to deliver your remarks. And at this time, you will receive questions.
to see him before we answer him. That's going to be top secret.
Thank you, Nancy.
Keeping with the same sequence for each question, we will begin with Doug Flournoy. We will then rotate the candidates' questions and answers. Let's begin. Doug Flournoy.
So,
Let me read the question. My goodness.
okay.
Access to government. Strategically, the population of Iowa and most cities our size is aging. Because of changes in technology, some older citizens contend they are being left behind because of trends in government, federal, state, and local that require much communication with government and its departments to be done electronically. If you are not especially computer literate, you are intimidated by new mandates and required e-filings and sourcing of information only at websites and through online research. Now at City Council meetings, elected officials focus on digital wireless tablets rather than paper. What do you propose to Fairfield citizens who are less technology capable to help them avoid a sense of disenfranchisement or a feeling of being left behind?
Well, off the top of my head, I don't know.
It's an interesting question.
It is an interesting question. It's interesting in the regard that I'm not sure if it's completely true. I imagine it's partly true, but I mean, I had a 90-year-old neighbor once who was computer literate, and she was just fine on her computer. I think the solution here would be to make these technologies available, probably through the library or some other public access, and then provide assistance at those locations to help people become acclimated to the technologies and the equipment that's there for them to use. Beyond that, I'm not certain what can be done to close that gap. I know that even for someone like myself, it's hard to keep up with all the technology that the kids are using these days, and I'm certain that what I'm doing in my classes is probably behind the curve, and trying to keep up with them is a constant struggle. So I think we need to be aware of it and try and address it as best we can. I don't know if there's a perfect solution, probably not, but certainly something we should consider when we want to reach out to the public.
Thank you. Patrick Bosold?
It is an interesting question. My experience with local government, both the city and the county, is they're perfectly willing to talk to you face-to-face, work in hard copy, etc. That's not to say this isn't an issue, but the first thing I would encourage someone to do if they are truly technologically challenged is just do it the old-fashioned way. Talk to somebody on the phone, go see them in person. That said, I like Doug's suggestions that the library, for example, has terminals that are free and open to the public. If something has to be done online or electronically, the other suggestion I would say from the private sector point of view is get some help. How many of us know people under the age of 30 or 25 or 15, for that matter, who could probably walk us through anything we ever want to know or need to know about reaching out to anybody else in the universe with their smartphone? So, I would recommend to anyone, ask for help, but let's do what we can to make it easy for any citizen to talk to anybody in government. I'm good with that.
Okay, thank you. Richard Walbo?
It is a tough question, and I happen to agree with Doug and Patrick on that. It's hard to make any more comments on it. I'm very contemplative. When a problem is presented before me, sometimes it takes time to get a good solution to it. If you're given a problem, give us the answer in 2 minutes. It's kind of hard. I have been working on some problems that are extremely difficult, and I'm thinking, oh, impossible, I'll never solve this one. How do you get private rights to coordinate or harmonize with public rights? And then after some time, the impossible solution comes to me, but that sometimes takes days. So this particular problem doesn't seem to be really a big problem. seniors have a problem, they can deal with it, as Patrick and Doug have suggested, by talking on the phone or going to the library or asking a teenager for help.
All right, thank you. Thank you. And please make sure to have the microphone closer to your mouth, because this is being live on 1570 KMCD, and also it's going to be on the Fairfield Media Center also. So we want to make sure that everybody hears your responses. Question 2, which we will have our first speaker of Patrick Bosold, is concerning utilities and costs. 2 critical public functions of the city government are providing quality drinking water and providing sanitary sewer. What is your understanding of the City of Fairfield current water and sewer capabilities? Please address each separately and mention present status, long-term needs and goals, way to manage financing of city needs for each, and rates for each, short-term and long-term. Patrick?
As it happens, through some of my work with the local Sierra Club, water quality has been a big focus for us for many years. First of all, in terms of drinking water, I want to commend the city for consistently staying on top of the situation when the budget and the need was present for drilling down to the Jordan Aquifer and providing all our water needs that way. This is something that I'm quite happy with in terms of the quality of water and the way the city has managed that function. I think it's been done well, and I would certainly want to support continuing with that. If there are improvements that we can make to make the water safer and more pure, fine, let's do them. Regarding sanitary sewer, that's been a hot issue here for the last few years, including for the Sierra Club, because as we've gone about promoting water quality in the state, I can't tell you how often we get hammered because we have sewer overflows in our backyard. So the city has done, in the last couple of years, we have kicked the can down the road for far too long when it comes to this issue. Everybody knows it now. And we can't do that anymore, and the city has really, stepped up and done what's been necessary to, among other things, raise rates, because sooner or later, ladies and gentlemen, infrastructure is something such that you get what you pay for. We have not paid for a long time, at least not sufficiently. The bills are coming due. I support the city in raising rates as it has had to do. I know that's been a painful process. I think that a lot of creative financing has been looked at and will continue to be, state revolving funds, grants. I can tell you that the Sierra Club Water Quality Committee is actively involved in that process and will continue to be so, and I want to be if I am on the city council as well.
Thank you, Patrick. Richard?
I mainly have a national perspective, not so much a local. So while I'm aware that we are replacing our sewer system, which is going to cost us around $30 million, I don't know, and I know there's a problem with the connection of and I know there's a problem with the connection between the sewer system and the water runoff system, but I don't know too much more than that. I don't know the details. As far as financing, I'd like to see the city get open a local bank, if that's possible. I was talking to somebody who's in the know about that, and he thought Fairfield is probably too small for that, and probably we would need a regional bank. But I'm thinking, well, we've got a credit union. Why can't the city have its own credit union or Fairfield Bank? Because if you own your own bank, then you don't have to pay interest, and you can use fractional reserve debt expansion, which means you can multiply your current money by 10 times. So that would reduce the debt load. So that's pretty much all I have to say on that.
Thank you. Doug?
Okay, I would echo those comments about the water quality. I'm perfectly happy with the water quality. I do have a softener in my house, but aside from that, I'm very content and have no complaints. I think it's being managed just fine as near as I can tell. We do have a problem with the sewer system. It's 100 years old in some places. Kind of like the sidewalks in the streets. We have a lot of infrastructure. We have a diminishing tax base, aging population. It's going to have to be addressed. There's no way around it. We don't want to suffer fines from the DNR. We're going to have to replace the sewer system. The opportunity here, though, is to develop a long-term plan and a vision for maintaining this system and other infrastructural systems so that we don't have this crunch and crisis that came on us now 50 years from now. And I'd like to see some kind of a financing and regular system put in place to maintain the system at par or above par the lifetime of the system. So I think that's crucial to avoid crises in the future, which we won't be here to experience, but certainly generations in the future will. So yes, I'm in favor of obviously doing all the repairs that need to be done to the sewer system. I'm in favor of raising the money that has to be raised to do it. Should be done as quickly as we can. That's reasonable. But I think that we have to do that in addition to immediate repairs, long-term planning. And I know that people have planned and taken care of the sewer system, but what happens is a lot of times repairs get put off and the budget gets tight. And what we need to do is find ways to avoid that situation or remediate them as soon as we can afterward.
Thank you, Doug. Question 3 deals with the Fairfield Business District. It's a three-pronged question, as you can see. So I'll start with discuss business district attractiveness related to marketing, tourist attractiveness, and return business. Include your pros and cons concerning beautification and seasonal projects and displays, storefront facade improvement initiatives and fund match, another segment of streetscape work. With this question, we will start with Richard.
Well, this is kind of like having to write a term paper without doing any research. Like I said, I've got a national perspective, and beautification and seasonal projects, I think the city's beautiful. I'm always impressed by what they do on the square. I really liked when they put up these, what would you call them, knickknacks and things. So, I like what's been done there. So I would assume that a lot of other people do too, and it probably attracts a lot of tourists. Storefront facade improvement fund match. I don't know. I'd like to look into that issue of fund matching. Another segment of streetscape work. Well, I don't really know what streetscape is, so I'll pass on that question. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Doug?
Well, I would agree that the downtown looks pretty nice most of the time. I mean, we have hanging baskets and we have nice gardens, and the place is clean, and I think that should be encouraged. And to the extent that we already have several activities that go on during the year where people come out and they clean up the downtown, right? I would like to see businesses take care maybe of their sidewalks a little bit better. I wouldn't be opposed to when we first moved to town, I mean, I had a baby carriage and I had to get onto the street to get down the sidewalk because it was so inconvenient. So I think those kinds of issues need to be addressed. We have aging population. We have a lot of people who come to town who are elderly, and having smooth sidewalks is important to them. In terms of storefront facade improvement, well, those goes hand in hand with sidewalk improvement and other outside features. There have been people have talked about having a systematic scheme of painting and what the storefront should look like. I think that if they're nice, if people are self-motivated, then that's the way we should proceed there. I don't think we should regulate it. Streetscape work, I think it's very nice what we have. If we could extend it, that'd be great. I don't think the city should encumber another debt in order to accomplish it. If we can do it with grants, that'd be great. But one of the things that concerns me right now is with the population and the tax base we have here, do we want to add more infrastructure to our budget? It requires maintenance, and it's a permanent cost to the city. So I'd always be cautious of adding more infrastructure if we don't need it.
Thank you, Doug. Patrick?
I'm echoing Doug in that I think the city's done an excellent job of beautifying the town, especially with the streetscape and all the other programs that have been executed here. I would definitely be in favor of sustaining and forwarding all of those efforts. I think it is one thing that makes Fairfield particularly attractive. Storefront facade improvement initiatives and fund matching. This actually can be a somewhat more complex topic than you might think at first glance. But again, I think what standards the city has put in place have been effective. I agree with Doug that the less government presence we have on the topic is the better. At the same time, setting some basic standards is probably a good idea. It seems like one way or the other, the existing town square and the cities that and the businesses that put up signs have exercised good taste and restraint. So those are things to be encouraged, I think. Streetscape, I thought it was a masterstroke when it was done. I'd like to see more of it done. Doug's thought about keep an eye towards, what long-term expenses you might incur are worth noting. To the best of my knowledge, the streetscape, once it's been put in, has been maintained either by the city or volunteers without major budgetary impact. So assuming that that's true, I think the more of it we can do, the better.
Thank you, Patrick. We had question 4, which deals with economic development. Discuss your perspective on what can be done to promote continued community economic growth. Include your views with regard to tax abatement, tax increment financing, or TIF, city funding towards study needs assessments, demographic labor and economic surveys, and public-private project partnering. We start with Doug.
All right. The thing about economic growth is there's no recipe. It's just people do what they think is going to work, and sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't, which kind of points to another issue I think is important, is that we have measurable outcomes for any initiatives that we want to implement. There's a lot of talk about those kinds of things. It's not always done. So, for example, with the deer ordinance last night, people talked about, well, what constituted success or not success. There's no clear measure of success if that ordinance is passed and implemented. So I would like to see some quantitative measures implemented when they can be. Tax abatement, I'm in favor of that. There was one approved last night for the sweet spot. We encourage businesses to expand and improve their businesses. I think that's a good idea. We should do that. Tax incremental financing, I don't have that's fine. I have no problem with that either. I think we should use it as a tool. City funding towards needs assessments, demographic, labor, and economic surveys, those have been done. I think they're a good idea. They should be done regularly. I don't know what the current projection on those most recent studies are, but they're probably 5 or 10 years out. And those are certainly worthwhile. We should use them as guides. Public-private project partnering, I don't have too much any experience with that really. Not even sure what it would mean. I think if it's feasible and possible, certainly we should explore every avenue that's out there for us to move the city forward and improve the quality of life. That's what the city government is supposed to be doing. So, yes, I think all those are good ideas, and I'm in favor of them, I suppose.
Thank you, Doug. Patrick?
Tax abatement, again, I think the city has applied those kinds of business support tools judiciously and effectively, to the best of my knowledge. I would want to continue advancing that approach. Tax increment financing, TIF, the same. Again, that's a topic that sometimes requires a little bit of research and sort of a case-by-case assessment. There are times when it can be a good idea, and there are times when it can be, if it's not monitored carefully, it can be abused. So I would say if I was put in a position of being on the committee to analyze any such, I'd want to take it case by case and make sure that it was a good use of the city's resources and supporting worthwhile economic development. To the best of my knowledge, the city has done an excellent job on needs assessments, demographic, labor, and economic surveys. By all means, we should continue this, be rigorous about it, do it regularly. Use, I'm not sure what resources the city has used for that to date, but definitely use qualified, well-regarded third parties whenever possible. Public and private project partnering, certainly support the theory. Again, this is something where I think you need to assess it carefully, case by case. What you don't want to wind up with is a situation where you've got a partnership where profits are privatized and liabilities are public. This does tend to happen at higher levels, at the state and federal level, and I do not want to see it happen here. So those are my views on those particular points. One other quick thing. I would, as a person involved in city government, I would want to work with the mayor, the city council, and county government to lobby with the state for better allocation of state funding than we've seen in the past. I can give more examples afterwards if anybody wants to hear them.
Thank you, Patrick. Richard?
Well, to be perfectly frank, taxes tend to bore me, and I don't know too much about them. There are 7 members on the council, and the other 6 represent the conventional perspective, and I represent the unusual or higher perspective. My interest is in putting into circulation a local currency. As you may know, there was a renaissance in the 12th and 13th century, and according to Bernard Leiter, who's the architect of the euro, his feeling was that this renaissance of the Middle Ages was due to the monetary system in place at that time. And a community currency with similar properties will stimulate the local economy, support local small business, create jobs. We could actually have a renaissance here because of the particular design of that currency in the Middle Ages. It forced the money to circulate into the lower echelons of society and allowed a level of prosperity unknown even by today's standards. And I'm thinking we can have the same thing here by implementing a debt-free local currency. So that's my perspective on money. Thanks.
Thank you, Richard. Question 5 deals with regulation of public events. Should the city be more restrictive or less restrictive with regard to event vendor activity, where, when, what, evening entertainment, music, volume, noise, city involvements with event alcoholic beverage sales, curfew standards? On this question, we start with Patrick.
I think the city, to the best of my knowledge and in my personal experience, the city has done an excellent job on managing public events. And they've had some real, talk about ragbri, which I thought everybody really stepped up for. So I would want to definitely support the city in everything that it's done in that regard. Vendor activity, don't have any real strong opinions about it. Generally favor less restrictions rather than more, keeping in mind that public safety is something that has to be considered along with any public event that is staged inside the city limits. Music, volume, and noise. I live 4 blocks away from city center, so I hear it all, and again, I would want to be open to any and all citizens, particularly as an at-large seat holder, on what they think constitutes appropriate and tasteful activity at events like these. But that said, I think the city's done a really good job of managing it so far. City involvement with event alcoholic beverage sales. I don't drink. I never have. I think it's got to be handled carefully. It seems to me that the last couple of events where a beer garden, for example, was established, it seemed to be monitored carefully. I think the city had to issue 4 citations for ragbri, and a lot of people were drinking a lot of beer that night. So again, it seems to be well managed. I would prefer that the city stays as far away as possible from getting involved in such events, but managing or regulating them properly. Curfew standards, if there's a need, consider it. Otherwise, leave it alone. Let people be free to live the life that they want to live.
Thank you, Patrick. Richard?
Yes, I think Patrick summed it up very well. I go to the square every first Friday art walk, and I don't see any problem. It's always beautifully done. I'm not aware of any problems, so I'm kind of surprised by this question here. I live about 5 blocks away. I do hear the sound on the square, but I've never noticed a problem. It doesn't bother me. So that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you. Doug?
All right. Well, vendor activity, where, when, what? I think, I don't know of any problems that we've had with vendor activity. The state has regulations that have to be followed for food vendors, for instance, and those are overriding. My experience with that has been it's always been delegated to the Art Walk Board, for instance, and they manage the vendors on the square and collect the fees. They decide what the content should be, and that seems to work pretty well. So they laid out very clear guidelines for what kind of vendors could be on the park and which ones had to be across the street on the sidewalk in front of businesses. And I don't know very many complaints whatsoever. So I think delegating it to the event sponsor might be a good way to go. It seems to have worked so far, with the, of course, the city with the overriding umbrella authority. Evening entertainment, music volume and noise. Again, I'm not sure, I haven't heard any complaints from anybody. I don't have any complaints. It seems reasonable at the time. Events are usually held on the weekend. It's not on a weeknight, and I think it's being managed just fine. I don't have a problem with it. The city, of course, again, is going to have overriding regulations, but I think they seem to be working, the ones we have in place are working right now. City involvement with event alcohol beverage sales. We don't have a lot of alcohol downtown or in the city in the year. Art Walk was very careful about Oktoberfest, and allowing, we were alcohol-free for a long time, and we decided to take the move and make Oktoberfest a beer garden, and it's been going on for a couple of years now, and it seems to be working quite well. There's no serious problem down there with alcohol. Ragbri, like Patrick said, went very smoothly, it seems. So, you know, again, I think the city is managing it very well, and the people who are given responsibility for managing those events seem to be doing a good job as well. So, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Curfew standards, my first thought was why and for whom? So, do we need curfews? Why do we need curfews? And who has to be curfewed? I don't know of anybody in those categories. So, kids run around at night sometimes and they vandalize. I don't think curfews are going to stop that. So, if you're going to put something into place, if it's not going to be effective, why pass an ordinance? So I don't see a need for having curfews at this point either.
Thank you, Ted. Sixth question concerns pet regulations. Our town is believed to have over 3,000 dogs and probably as many cats. The city enforces ordinances for dangerous and vicious animals, for standards of care, for animal waste disposal, and utilization of a Citizens Animal Control Review Board. Does Fairfield have adequate animal control laws? Should more be done? With this, we start with Richard.
Well, I would think that the city does have animal control regulations. I've never had a problem. I've never seen a problem. I'm not aware of a problem. So, what can you say? I don't know that anything more needs to be done, but I'm not aware of a problem. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Richard. Doug?
I'm fairly quiet on this point as well. I think most people take care of their pets fairly well. We do have some ordinance in place to cover some issues relating to animals as pets, but it doesn't seem to be a serious problem for us, so at least not in my experience. So my first thought would be, why should we do more if we don't have an issue? Now, if an issue comes to the council and someone can make a good case, then I guess we would look at it, but right now I don't think that exists.
Thank you, Doug. Patrick?
Yeah, again, I think Fairfield's done an excellent job on putting the regulations in place that are in place, and I want to thank the city for having a leash law and also for specific requirements for pet owners to clean up after their pets. These things are sometimes not observed in my part of town, but it's nice to know that if somebody's really out of line, that there are ordinances and that local authorities can be called in to straighten somebody out if they're an irresponsible owner. I think that the system as it is working well. I would agree with Doug that let's not do anything more than we have to. Let people enjoy their pets. If something is brought to the city council that requires attention, let's look at it. Again, case by case, let's just be level-headed, sensible, and respectful as much as possible of people's individual liberties, as well as and while reminding them that they have responsibilities if they're going to be pet owners as well.
Thank you, Patrick. Last question, and I know you've had some interesting questions tonight, and maybe some of those questions that you had in mind have not been addressed at this time. So, top priorities. What, in your opinion, are the two most important issues you will be asked to consider in the next 12 months of city government? Which one will get your top priority? How will you deal with each? And we start with Doug.
Well, I think there's just, in my mind, just one major issue that the city has to look at, and that's maintaining infrastructure and repairing infrastructure. So that covers a lot of different things: sewer system, streets, sidewalks, and buildings. My approach would be, well, we have to abide by state law, so the sewer system has to be fixed, and that would be obviously a top priority for the city, I think, in the next near future. And I think there's already a mechanism in place for funding that, and I'm certain that, I don't know for sure, but fairly certain that all avenues of fundings have been pursued, and it's going to come down to the property tax owners to pay for that. So that, I think, is going to require a lot of attention. It'll be controversial in some cases, but I think it'll have to be done. Second most important issue, I don't know. I think probably economic development. We have a changing demographic here in Jefferson for a number of years, and it's not really working in our favor in some respects. We're going to be faced with diminishing and aging population, and the one way to reverse that is to encourage people to move here. And that's not a bad thing. That's actually a very good thing. Bringing in people from the outside is always energizing to a community, bringing in new ideas, fresh faces, new perspectives. Along with that goes new expectations for people who live here already, and things like building codes, better sidewalks, streets. People come here, good school systems. People come here, if they want to move here, we have to make it attractive. And I know some of these things people don't want to address necessarily because they don't feel a need to, but when you bring someone in from another community where those things are already in place and they have certain expectations, if you want to attract people, you need to make your town attractive. We do have an attractive town, but there are always things that we can do to improve. And I think infrastructure is probably, again, the primary place where we can work on that.
Thanks, Doug. Patrick?
Top of the list for priorities, and again, this is something I think the city and Economic Development Association, Fairfield Entrepreneurial Association have done a good job with. I'd just like to see a lot more of it. We have too many young people who can't stay here. And the Sustainable Living Program over at the university turns out a lot of absolutely top-notch, world-class young people who want to stay here, and they can't do it because there is not economic opportunity, particularly in the areas in which they have been trained. This is where Pathfinders, Hometown Harvest, and Buy Fresh, Buy Local come into the picture. And I would very much like to see, to the extent that the city can, a lot more attention put on developing that kind of economic development, business infrastructure, encouraging people along those lines. New jobs that are green, that are built to last, all those kinds of things. Top priority. The second thing would be, when we touched on water, stormwater is actually a related but separate issue to unfortunately, it's not separate with our current system, but it needs to be. And green infrastructure for stormwater handling, some good progress is being made on that as we speak. So I would really want to support that kind of development. And related to that, renewables. The city did an excellent job on getting all of its buildings energy efficient. Let's make them energy self-sufficient. Let's put renewable systems on all public buildings. And the other thing is, let's do everything we can with power purchasing agreements and other things to make the city of Fairfield as completely energy self-sufficient as possible. It's doable now. And that's, again, as a priority, as an economic development priority and environmental quality priority, those are the things that I think are the most important for the next 12 months.
Thanks, Patrick. Richard?
I agree with Patrick about the need for our community to become self-sufficient. If you've been watching the national scene, then you know that the dollar is in trouble, and there's some people who think that a crash is inevitable, it's irreversible. I don't know if you subscribe to that theory or not. But it's certain that the people are struggling financially. And the reason is that there's not enough money in circulation, and The deeper problem is that we have a debt money system in which all money is loaned into circulation and has to be paid back plus interest. So if all the money in circulation is loaned, then there's always more debt than there is money to pay back, and the debt will compound to astronomical amounts, and we know that's what it's doing. So the problem that our community is going to be facing is that if the dollar has a problem, then we're going to have a problem with survival, and I would like to, as much as possible, become self-sufficient from the dollar. Food self-sufficiency, we should have promote local farms, greenhouses, and buy fresh, buy local. And last but most is the community currency. Because if the dollar disappears, then we need something to buy with. And even if the dollar doesn't disappear, if we have a community currency, there will be enough in circulation that people who are right now unemployed will be able to create something and sell it, because this community currency will be so abundant. You'll have this community currency in your hand. What are you going to do with it? You're going to buy these things that the unemployed can create. So it would be a boon to society. That's one of my strongest proposals, is that we create the community currency.
Thank you, Richard. We now go into our closing remarks for each candidate. You will each have 3 minutes for which to deliver your remarks. We will go in the same order as we began. So that starts with Doug. Well, you may ask questions on your own time, but as part of this forum, we're going into our closing questions now. Well, it was going to be longer, but since we don't have a 4th candidate here, we're going to stay with the structure that we have, and then there will be time afterwards for you to individually visit with your... Thank you very much. Doug Florklernite, it is now your time. Thank you.
Okay. Well, feel free to, I'll stick around for a few minutes here and answer any question you might have. But thank you, Nancy, for holding this, doing all the work to put this together. I know thank you, Patrick and Richard, for being here tonight. Appreciate this. It's very important that we do this kind of activity when running for public office. I guess I'd like to say that there are a lot of good ideas out there. A lot of good ideas. The hard part is which one are you going to pick and which one are you going to implement. That requires compromise and requires getting people on board. And that's always the hard work. Which decision, who's going to back it. And you have to have good listening skills, you have to be level-headed, and you have to be reasonable. And you have to be willing to give up something that you believe in, maybe compromise in order to get something that's for the greater good. And I think I can do that. And I'd be glad to serve the community as needed, and I would do the best I can. I know it will be a lot of work. There's a steep learning curve in the beginning. I think I'm capable of tackling that learning curve and becoming competent and effective a fairly short period of time. I guess aside from that, I've covered just about everything I can think of, and I have my own record that speaks for itself. If you know me, you know what I've done in this community and what I've been involved with, how I get things done, and how capable I am. I think I've already demonstrated that, and be glad to serve the community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doug. Patrick?
Second Doug's emotions on almost all of it. Well spoken. Nancy, I do want to thank the Chamber, you and the Chamber, for organizing this evening. Had a chance to say most of what I think is most important. Again, I think the city has done overall a really good job. I am not running for this seat because I am unhappy with city government. I am doing this because I was asked to step up by a number of different people, and I did so understanding that this is serious, heavy lifting, volunteer commitment for an extended period of time. So I intend to go into it with that understanding. I intend to work as effectively as I possibly can with all the players and decision makers on the council and in city government. I intend to be the best listener I can be in terms of working with constituency, which in this case is the entire city for an at-large seat. And Fairfield is a great place. Let's make it greater. I've said plenty of things about how I think we can do it. I understand that, I'll have the opportunity to do that to the extent that the socio-political economic reality that surrounds us will allow, and I intend to work within those parameters and push the edge of the envelope when I think it's time to do that.
Thank you, Patrick. Richard?
Well, I'm always pushing the edge of the envelope. I agree with Doug and Patrick here. My interest mainly is in the mechanism of government, the underlying. It's like the plumbing. You go into the basement to see how the government is working. And mainly my interest is in securing our rights, because our rights are being deteriorated. And maybe we're not seeing that at the local level. We are seeing that at the national level. And so I want to be the voice of higher law, and that's really my perspective. And what I'd like to do with my time left is just read some principles of natural law. Our tradition of natural law goes back about 2,000 years. And so I wanted to read what some of the people had to say about it. The term liberty is a composite of all natural law rights. In 1765, Otis wrote that the origin of these rights, liberty, security, and property, is the law of nature and its author. Alexander Hamilton wrote, "Upon this law depends the natural rights of mankind." Thomas Jefferson wrote in 1774 that the colonists were claiming their rights derived from the law of nature. Lucas de Peña said, "The just ruler will uphold and guarantee freedom and will further the cause of freedom by interfering as little as possible. There is nothing on earth more precious than civil liberty." In 1717, John Wise said that it was because God does not permit it that rulers cannot invade the rights and liberties of the people. In 1764, James Otis wrote, "There could be no prescription old enough to supersede the law of nature and the grant of Almighty God, who has given to all men a natural right to be free." Elisha Williams noted in 1744 that there are too many arbitrary governments in the world. These are not, properly speaking, governments, but tyrannies, and are absolutely against the law of God and nature. And here's a court opinion, interestingly enough. All acts of legislature apparently contrary to natural rights and justice are, in our laws, and must be in the nature of things, considered as void. The law of nature are the laws of God, whose authority can be superseded by no power on earth. The legislature must not obstruct our obedience to him, from whose punishments they cannot protect us. All human constitutions which contradict his laws we are in conscience bound to disobey. Such have been the adjudications of our courts of justice. Robin versus Hardaway from 1772. John Locke asserted that any ruler who exceeds his lawful power acts without authority and may be opposed as any other man who by force invades the rights of another. Sure. Aeneas Piccolomini, who would later become Pope Pius II, stated that any ruler who placed his personal advantage above that of the people could be branded a tyrant and disobeyed. And my last one, Jonathan Mayhew wrote in 1750 that when a ruler turns tyrant and makes his subjects his prey and to destroy, we're bound to throw off our allegiance to him and to resist. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you to Patrick Bosold, Doug Flournoy, and Richard Walbaum for participating in this opportunity to address questions that concern how each of you hopes to ensure a vision for Fairfield that is progressive and insightful. The sharing of your goals and aspirations is vital knowledge to the Fairfield voters who will go to the election booths next Tuesday. Thank you again for participating in tonight's 2013 Fairfield City Council forum, and thank you all for attending and participating and voting in this year's vital election. Thank you.